thank you for everyone who read this previously and thought I was worthy to come read it for other people. So I'm going to read parts of a short story, which got way longer than I thought. What you need to know, because I'm going to start in the middle, is that Pfizer's created a female Viagra, and that it's leaking into the water system, and that the scene we're going to start with is a woman, Lenina, who is swimming with a manatee. What a beautiful animal, Lenina thought to herself, staring down at Manny with a curious, out-of-body affection. Manny had always been there for her. He never skipped out on a date. He was always here in the canal for her when she needed him. She snapped a few pictures of his curved back, admired his burliness. For the first time, she considered Manny's supple muscles and the arch of his spine as it led to his fluked tail. She imagined him bent with a garden instrument in hand, shirtless and sweating, tending to some hot, fleshy activity in the backyard, the kind of activity that's backlit by an orange sun. In her daydream, his manatee muscles clench and ripple with each stroke, and she admires his aqua mammal masculinity. From the porch until she is drawn by his pheromones to his side, where she runs a hand along his bare, moist back and presents him with a glass of lemonade. She took a breath and dived down to him. She plucked a few grasses and presented them to his whiskered mouth. Manny noticed her eyes, their lids lowered, her lips full and puckered around the outside of her mouthpiece. He took the grass gingerly with his mouth, careful not to bite down on her fingers, and Lenina left them inside long after he finished chewing, and slowly slid them out with closed eyes. There was suddenly a little extra to the smell of the water. Lenina swam up for breath, and Manny felt her fingers return again to running along the scars of his back. Ah, back to normal, he thought. But then she cupped the skinny part of his tail with her fingers and stroked it a few times. Manny continued to shuffle grasses into his mouth with his jowly cheeks, attempting to ignore her. He suddenly felt the warm torso of Lenina wrap itself around him, her hands reaching around to his chest, her breasts pushing firmly against his shoulder blades. Startled, he bucked his back to try to shake her hug off, but Lenina held firm, feeling his spine slide underneath her. After a few seconds of sliding and riding and holding, Lenina let go and swam underneath him. Confused by Lenina in the typical manatee mating position, Manny averted his eyes as she blew bubbles up at his belly. Manny lifted his head towards the surface, grunting, and he and Lenina surfaced for air simultaneously. But Manny quickly dove below to hide from her under the dock. At the surface, Lenina took a few deep breaths, exhilarated by her manatee action, realizing her passion when she intuits the word man is in the word manatee. Just before she goes under again, her ears pick up the murmur of a boat traveling down the canal. She swam back to the dock, seeing the lumbering gray Manny huddled beneath it, and exited the water to get out of the way of the boat, whose Katy Perry she could already begin to distinguish. She was embarrassed and flushed at the chest with her passion, yet her feelings for Manny remained. She would make him a man. She would find her Ursula and turn Manny's mermaid into a merman. The boat slowed near the dock, pitched an anchor a few hundred feet from Lenina's. The spring breakers down from Tampa in a rented speedboat clicked open beers and shotgunned them together, and Lenina looked on disgusted. So I'm going to skip a little bit, but the spring breakers decided it's a good idea to take hard drugs while they're hanging out with the manatee. And what ends up happening is a gust of wind blows their sheet of acid into the water, and the manatee ends up eating it. was swimming away, his stomach beginning to cramp in on the Doritos and the acid he ate so gluttonously. Lenina dove underwater to keep track of his movements, to keep him totally to herself and away from those frat idiots in their hoochie boat. But when she noticed Manny swimming away, upside down this time, on his back, with what she considered to be a smile on his face, she knew something was wrong. The man, a T, she loved was different. Manny never swam like this when she was with him, but her brain did recognize the obvious mating display. Perhaps he was finally reciprocating. Manny looked up through the turquoise waters at the afternoon sun, which glinted down on him, divided into a million points of starry yellow light by the ripples on the surface. The water turned quickly to aquamarine, and then to green, and then to yellow, to purple, in a strobing effect. On his back, the glistening sun swirled in a galactic kaleidoscope. In the middle, the face of his mother, Gertrude, and her sagging jowls and her wrinkling neck. "Blue as you do," she said to him over and over. "Blue as you do." From the center of a swirling maroon universe, Manny felt giddy inside and left bubbles up to the surface which refracted more lights, each bubble containing within it a double rainbow palm tree, which in turn caused Manny to bubble up more. Still in love from the drugs, Lenina approached him from above, assuming the role of the female manatee in the mating ritual. She rubbed his soft belly and fingered the rolls on his abdomen. She sunk down into his flesh and held him above the seafloor for a few seconds, embracing him with everything her chemically induced love could give. Manny looked up to see her big hazel eyes multiply in front of him 1,000 times, blinking rhythmically with his heart. She hummed through her face mask to him. He heard her voice reverberate against the cavernous chambers of his ear. A few hundred feet away, the spring breakers were packing up their things in the boat and pulling up anchor. The leftover beer cans were strewn into the water, and the engine was revved a few times to get it going. Soon, though, Manny's trip morphed, and he could see in front of him a phantasmagoric palace of seagrass. Temples devoted to his one true love, the halophilia grass high in nitrogen, a manatee Eden, with his estranged son swimming underneath a green, fibrous aqueduct. And he swam towards it. Lenina felt cockblocked. The person that she cared most about had rejected her. She was on the verge of the first interspecies aquatic romance ever recorded. The first active participant in a manatee courtship ritual. But he swam away. The hum of an engine snapped her back to the present. She noticed the underbelly of the spring breaker's boat spring into action, and noticed Manny, delusional, hallucinating, attracted perhaps by the low-frequency noise, headed straight into its path. She took off swimming as fast as she could, coming up for air to signal, to raise her arms, to alert the driver. The snorkel was in her mouth. It was no use. The spring breakers were busy flirting with one another and fist-bumping to hear her guttural pleas echoing out of the top of her snorkel. And the driver gunned the boat even faster. Manny, drawn to the humming vortex of his innermost herbivore desires, chugged on, spell-gazed, towards an edible, grass-built Taj Mahal in the sea. As he swam, it moved closer, and the humming got louder, and the spinning got faster. Lenina had to save Manny from the boat. Manny, whose gums had jolted her sensual self back into being. Manny, with his L-shaped scar. Manny, whose strong back would carry her one day across the threshold. She swam, determined to push him under before the motor could clip him and leave him with another scar. One on the heart. The boat, now 100 feet away, charged forward. Lenina got a hold of Manny's tail and tried to pull all 2 tons of him back to the dock, but he propelled forward towards his personal hallucinatory heaven. With the boat at 50 feet, she swam on top of him, wrestling him down to the sandy sea bottom, but Manny was full of doughy air and wouldn't budge. Lenina took a breath, and with the boat at 10 feet Heading straight for both of them, she took Manny in her arms and tickled his underside. A chorus of bubbles streamed from his mouth, and he descended. Lenina ducked under the spinning blade of the propeller, but she was still riding a 2-ton manatee, and with her back partially exposed, the blade cut into her. Blood filled the water. Manny, goofy and hearing sweet baby James in his ear, flipped onto his back to see Lenina swimming in a red cloud, his eyes fixed on the shape of her wound. She left him, swimming to the dock, a faint trail of blood marking her path to the shore. Manny stared on at the lucid pictures looping through his mind, the image of his mother's mutilated fluke, a tugboat, the clunk of his own flesh against the hard belly of a speedboat, his innocent back searing with pain. His grass palaces dissolving in front of him into purple seeds that sowed themselves back to the sea bottom, waiting to sprout again, and he cautiously followed her back to the dock, hoping she would visit tomorrow. When the boat had left, and the blood dissolved into the water, Lenina checked to find that Manny was okay, but emotionally shaken underneath the dock. Herself shaken, she panted for a little bit and found that the blood had finally stopped. She reached down through the slots in the dock to Manny, underneath, who raised his snout to lick her hands. And later that night, when she undressed for a shower, she looked in the mirror at the scar to find it healed in the shape of a heart on her lower back. A manatee tramp stamp.